Okay, and this is the Black in the Day in the 313 segment, an Afrocentric perspective on African and African American history and phenomena in Detroit and wherever it occurs. And I think it's been at least 1 week. We weren't here last week on March the 27th. So some of the activities, events I'm going to talk about tonight will combine last things that would have occurred in the past week and in the upcoming week. I'd like to just give a shout out to the Facebook family. I see my sisters there. Greetings, and a real good friend, Brother Randall. We urge you to tune in. This is Get Up, Stand Up Show with Minister Malik Shabazz. You're viewing us on TV 33 WHPR, broadcasting live from Highland Park, Michigan. Thanks to Watkins Broadcasting, Brother RJ Watkins and Minister Malik Shabazz. We're available live streaming at www.tv33whpr.com. Also available on the Android app, available at the Google Play Store or the Apple app at the Apple App Store. You can also view us on via Google TV, the Roku box, and Comcast Channel 91. Tune in, view us, and listen, call in, share your perspective if you have something to add that maybe I'm going to talk about tonight, or if it's something that you may like to introduce, or a topic you may like me to broach on another day. You can call in, or you can reach out to me at chikekefense@gmail.com, and that's CHIKEKEFENTSE@gmail. And you can also reach us. The call-in number is 313-868-0351, 313-868-4336, 313-868-0342. And as we've done in the past, I'd like to take a brief moment of silence for the African ancestors that went before, foremothers, all of those great people known to us and those unknown to us that gave their lives, lived their life in a way that would make life better for our people. So we take a moment of silence for them. We say thank you very much for your struggle and sacrifice. And I'd like to, I'm not as current on my announcements as I should be, but I would like to mention a series of community engagement sessions hosted by the Detroit Black Community and Food Security Network and Just Food Detroit. Come and learn about the future Detroit People's Food Co-op. This is a food co-op that the Detroit Black Food Security Network and others are creating. It's a cooperative effort to make healthy, quality food available at affordable prices. They have a series of events where they're letting people know about how the progress is coming with the development of the food co-ops. And the remaining two sessions, each of the sessions is from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. The next one will be on April the 22nd at Earthworks, and that's at 1264 Meldrum Street in Detroit, Michigan. And on May the 20th at the Avalon Village in Highland Park, which is at Avalon, if I'm not mistaken, Avalon Street, which is 1 or 2 blocks north of Glendale, between Woodward and 2nd. Also, as we've done in the past, we're going to refer to Ken Coleman's book On This Day in African American Life in Detroit, which gives us a day-by-day account of key historical events. But I just want to back up. We were out in the studio last week, and it may have been 2 weeks that we were in since we were here. And in the last show, I do remember I didn't get to complete where I was going after I did the announcements for the events for the past week. For that particular week, I was trying to get into this whole concept of what I'm calling the war on Black America, and it's really a war on African people, period. And this war has been going on historically from the most recent iteration, I would say, would be 1500 with the transatlantic slave trade. I know some people out there, oh, get over it. Well, I can't get over it when people, African people, my people, people that look like me, are constantly under attack. And I shouldn't even have to try to assert that that's factual. I happened to be watching the news today, and I was watching the senators announce their vote for this new proposed judge for the Supreme Court, and I couldn't help but see a series of white men who are committed to preserving their way of life, their value system, and of course, and it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, at the cost of African people. We know historically that has been the case, and a whole slew of other people that don't fit their paradigm, as each one of them stepped to the microphone and pledged to support this most recent Supreme Court nominee. And for me, if it has never been more clear, anybody that is not clear by now that we're being warred upon, the fact that Trump got elected, the fact that people are still coming out in droves to see him and to listen to this rhetoric, the fact that there's a whole bunch of what appears to be imbecilic, idiotic, Three Stooges, Keystone Cop type behavior going on in the White House. And it's interesting because I want to be very clear. I don't expect much more, but I would think that at some point we would get it. A lot of what we're seeing is celebration and pushback to the fact that Barack Obama was elected into the presidency. He represented change for this country. He was representative of the concept of change, and he was very much a threat to the principles and ideas that were truly at the formation of this country. And in a very similar way, it's very similar to what Reconstruction represented from 1865, which began in 1865 and of course was rendered impotent by 1876 due to the Hayes-Tilton sellout. And in that instance, we, not really knowing better, put our interests, allowed our interests, and we really thought that this country, this government would save us. And for the short period of time that we were protected, to the degree that we were, under Reconstruction, we made exponential success. Comparably, within that 11 or 12 year period, black people have not even made close to the amount of success. Definitely not before or since then. And I want to be very clear, I'm talking about in the context of 1500 going forward 1500 marks, for me, the date of the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade. There were early attempts and efforts that began predecessors to the transatlantic slave trade as early as 1441, but by 1500 it becomes full scale. And gradually you have new countries entering. First it's Portugal, then it's Spain, the British, the Netherlands. And in some places this goes on for 500 years. And I can't help but ask myself, and I ask people all the time, what kind of people would build ships, create systems of mass production based on labor, go and cross oceans 2 and 3 times to get people that they selected to enslave for hundreds of years, lobotomize, sodomize, rape, pillage, attempt to dehumanize, and of course we know the African spirit, nor can God be destroyed. They're one and the same. And I'm saying all this to try to create a context for what I'm calling a war on black folks. And it really exceeds 1500. I just don't want to expand it back to ancient Kemet. That's of course another conversation. We thank you for viewing us. Again, we ask you to call in with your comments, thoughts, or remarks at 313-868-0351-868-4336, 868-0342. As I think about this idea of us being warred upon, because some of us are fighting back, but we're not fighting with the fury of a people that really truly understand they're being warred upon. And this is not the kind of war where we have to go out and kill people. It's not even that kind of war. The war, first and foremost, is for the reclamation of our minds. Until we reclaim our minds, our Africanity and who we are, we'll continue to get what we get. And that's just my position. You don't have to agree. If you want to counter that or call with a better suggestion, call us. The numbers should be appearing on the screen in a minute. I want to get back to this. Many of the events that I'm going to mention tonight, for me, clearly reiterate or validate the idea that black people are engaged in a war, because many of the events are either us responding to direct attacks on us, or us in some way, meager or not, trying to be proactive. I see you, Baba Malik and Mama Kazi. Thank you for viewing, tuning in, and if you have something to add or comment or whatever, you can call in. And of course, Baba Malik, I think Molly Wap has another event coming up on April the 15th, I think it is. And I have a caller. Good evening, caller. Welcome to the Get Up Stand Up Show. You're on the Black in the Day segment. Could you tell us your name, please? Hello? Hello?
How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm all right, man. I was just listening, and I called it this Yakadon. I'm doing you on channel 91 in Detroit.
Okay.
And, I was just listening to you, one word sparked my interest, and that was the word Kim.
Which word was that?
Kim.
Kim?
Kim.
Oh, okay. All right.
When I heard you speak on Kim, that sparked my interest, man. And when a brother speaks on Kim, I know he has to know about Maya. And is this true? Are you familiar with Maya?
You talking about the concept from ancient Egypt?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm very much familiar with it, but let me say this, because I don't have a lot of time. Could you kind of be brief with your comment, because I got another caller and I need to get back to the content of the show. I'm not trying to be rude, but did you have a comment you wanted to add about Ma'at?
It's not a problem. I just wanted to spark the consciousness of the viewers that is watching. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
I love you, brother.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for calling in. Good evening and welcome to the Get Up Stand Up Show. You're on the Black in the Day segment, Black in the Day in the 313. Could you tell us your name and offer a quick comment, please?
It's your brother Steve.
Greetings, brother Steve. How you doing?
All right. First of all, I want to know, how do I view you? Are you on Facebook Live? And what is your Facebook page?
I'm on Facebook Live right now. If you go to Kefense Chike, and I'll spell that Kefentse, last name Chike, and I try to always broadcast on Facebook Live simultaneously, and I'm trying to get current with posting the past shows on the YouTube channel, which you can find by searching my name on YouTube as well.
That's what I've been wanting. I've been meaning to call you to announce your how we can link up with you, because you gave a lot of information. And 2 weeks ago, you were reading like days and events that happen on different days.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna get back to in a minute. Say that again.
Where were you getting that information from?
Okay, the name of the book, there's a brother named Ken Coleman who used to write for one of the local newspapers.
Oh, okay, that's his book. Okay, I know the book now.
The name of the book is On This Day, African American Life in Detroit. And I kind of use that as an anchor or a frame because I try to introduce a lot of other topics as well.
Well, brother, I'm gonna ask you a question, and I've been trying to figure it out with black folks.
Let me hold you up for 1 minute. I'm not sure what the situation is, but I think I'm getting some feedback that we can't hear the caller as well. So if it's something that we can do, or if the caller can maybe speak louder, we would appreciate it.
Okay, well, I want to ask you this. You just said something that's profound that a lot of our people don't understand. We are at war, but we don't realize whose team we on. We don't recognize the uniform. And another thing I want to say, every time they pass legislation, every time they pass some type of voter suppression, every time they place oppression on us, that is an act of violence. Violence does not have to mean that I have to put my hands on you in order to act violently towards you. I'm just wondering when our people are just going to recognize the violence and meet violence with violence. Meaning, you either, like Malcolm said, you either go to the ballot or you go to the bullet. It is that time, brother, because if you look at our conditions, we are one move away from checkmate in this country.
I agree with you. You still there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I got some things I want to talk about, so if you want, you can wrap your comments up real quick so I can get to the content. But I agree with you.
Brother, I just want to know if you agree with what I'm feeling and what my opinion is of what our conditions are currently in America. You look at today, tomorrow, Malcolm X would have done the Battle of the Bullet. We have wasted 53 years. We have done nothing. Very little, brother. We wasted 53 years, and if you go back and you listen to the Battle of the Bullet, that was another blueprint, another key to our freedom, but we've chosen to turn our back on what our freedom is.
No, I agree with you, brother. I do. I appreciate you calling in, and hopefully you'll call back and reach out to me, and let's keep the dialogue happening, okay?
And again, announce your page again, brother, throughout the
okay, my Facebook page. You can reach my Facebook page through my name, Kefense Chike, Kefentse, last name Chike. You also can find past shows on YouTube by searching through my name. Thanks again. And going back to on this day in African American life in Detroit, on April the 1st, and we are in the 4th month, April. And I think I got things kind of mixed up, so I'll start with April because I'm going to go back some dates because some key events happened over the past 2 weeks. Like the founding of the RNA and the New Bethel shootout. And there was an excellent program. I'm sorry that I couldn't make it. I think it was this past Saturday with his brother who has written a book on how you stop social movements. His name is Christian. I forgot his last name if somebody was at the event or knows his name. What's up, Mama Kosowa? I see you. I hope everything is good with your family. We urge you to call in and give us a little feedback about that presentation this past Saturday. On April 1st in 1984, unfortunately, noted Motown songwriter and recorded artist Marvin Gaye was assassinated due to a result of a dispute between his father. And many of us know, the whole sad story about him and his father getting into a situation. Unfortunately, according to what was reported, his father killed him. And that's unfortunate because Marvin Gaye was definitely a treasure and a very much a talented person. And he was big in Detroit. I think he was originally from D.C., if I'm not mistaken, but he was murdered in L.A. in 1984. On April 4th in 1968, noted civil rights leader, orator, Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated by James Earl Ray while standing on the balcony at the Lorraine Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee. And tomorrow will be the 49th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. I know it's people in the audience that were around then that remember. I remember. Not only was everybody distraught, but people decided they was going to tear some stuff up once again. And when people feel powerless or are not clear on how to effectively use their power, we resort to all kind of things, trying to get some release and some satisfaction. I'll stop for a minute. Good evening and welcome to the Get Up Stand Up Show. This is the Black in the Day segment. Could you tell us your name and offer a quick comment, please? Hello? Hello?
Hey, when we locked up together?
I don't even know who you are. Tell me who you are.
This is Yakanan.
Did you call in a few minutes ago?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we were locked up together because I don't necessarily remember being in that situation. I have done presentations in a variety of prisons, so I don't know.
Oh, okay, all right, my bad. I love you, brother. All right.
All right, thanks again.
Look familiar, though.
All right, thanks. All right, that was a little different, but thanks. Anyhow, Dr. King was assassinated on March 4th in 1968. On April 5th, 1968, rebellions broke out in Detroit, Michigan, and throughout the country in response to the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Local high school students from Cooley, Mumford, and several other schools walked out of school in protest. They were also joined by workers from the Chrysler plant and a lot of other people that just walked off the job, walked out of school. And it's important to note, about 2 weeks prior to this, on March the 14th, Martin Luther King gave a presentation in the metropolitan area. I had announced it in a previous show. And also, of course, a few years back in 1962, I think it was, a year before the March on Washington, what people say was the rehearsal for the March on Washington occurred in Detroit. There were over 100,000 people who marched down down Woodward Avenue to Cobo Hall, and a speech was given there. There were people there like, James Del Rio, Reverend Albert B. Clegg, and others that helped to orchestrate and organize this march, along with Reverend C.L. Franklin. Pissed off, in many cases didn't know what to do, grief-stricken, and just started tearing stuff up. They were tearing stuff up in D.C. They demonstrated this in the James Brown movie, and there was another movie about this talk show host, I forget his name, and D.C. kind of went off there as well. And they like to contextualize these as riots and race riots. This is purely people who feel powerless, not being real clear, or having suppressed their own agency for so long and not feeling like they can take it anymore. Anyhow, in the spirit of Martin Luther King, I urge you tomorrow to pour libation, say his name, talk to young people about him, commemorate his sacrifice, his life, even if you don't agree with if you disagree with non-violence. This brother was a spirit that came to the earth realm who was committed to trying in his way to make life better for his people and for all people. And I contend as a black nationalist and a Pan-Africanist that any of the work that we do, even that we see expressly specific to our people, can't help but contribute to the advancement of humanity. And historically, it's consistent with what Africans have done in the past. As we created culture and institutions which enabled us to have advanced civilization, the first advanced civilization, it was through the work that we did to eke out our existence and create civilization and a livelihood and to feed ourselves and to thrive. It ultimately enhanced all humanity. Unfortunately, the nature of some of the people was not consistent with ours, or they got the incorrect knowledge and information. In many cases, they took the gifts that we gave and turned them against us, and that can come out in future shows as well. On April the 17th, and I'm backpedaling a little bit now, in 1870, after the passage of the 15th Amendment to the Constitution, and if you don't know, the 15th Amendment allegedly guarantees the right to vote. 13th, 14th. 13th, you end slavery. 14th, you make people citizens. 15th, guarantees the right to vote. Noted abolitionist, freedom fighter on the Underground Railroad, and a member of the African Mysteries. And the African Mysteries, or African American Mysteries, was a segment, if you will, of the Underground Railroad conductors and activists who actually not only decided to create an entity separate from white abolitionists, they also carried arms, and this was a secret society in the abolitionist community of black men and women in Detroit. And according to the lore associated or that surrounds the secret society, George Baptiste was one, and William Lambert was another. For you to become a part of this society, the initiation process was for you to leave Detroit, go into a territory that held enslaved Africans, and bring an African, an enslaved African, out of slavery through the Underground Railroad. This was the initiation process. That's deep. And we used to get down like that back in the day. I don't know what happened. That was back in the 1850s, all the way, I guess 1830s to 1865, something like that. But we have more recent instances of black folks getting down, being about it, trying to bring liberation to our people. Anyhow, after the passage of the 15th Amendment, George D. Baptiste posted a public notice that read, "Notice to stockholders," this is a quote, and this is coming from Ken Coleman's book. "Notice to stockholders of the Underground Railroad, this office is permanently closed." I like the idea of saying, hey, look, we don't even have to do this anymore. But I don't think the brother really knew what the future had in store for us, because historically, every time we tried to progress, every time we push a foot forward, we're always met with resistance. And the only thing we can do is continue to push and move forward in whatever way that you're called to do so. On April the 7th in 1966, hundreds of Northern high school students staged a 4-day walkout after the principal, Arthur Carty, attempts to suppress an editorial written by senior Charles Coding. Now, this brother Charles Coding read a very incendiary commentary about the very poor conditions, deplorable conditions at Northern High School, and the low quality of education. In fact, students were expressing that the education that was being administered to them in the school was well below standard. There was also the Human Rights Commission. I forget the exact title of this particular commission. It was made of several African American leaders and other leaders around the city. And around the same time, it came out that the high schools that Detroit African Americans were in Detroit were greatly understaffed. They were getting inadequate education, an inferior form of education. There was all kind of gerrymandering going on as the black population was increasing in Detroit. And what the people on the school board would do, they would change the feeder schools, the elementary and junior high schools, the elementary schools that fed the junior high schools, and the junior high schools that fed the high schools. They would change these from time to time to try to keep the white high school students and white junior high school students from having to go to school with black students. That was in the 60s. We can go back to the 1800s, 1830s, when they had public schools that black people could pay taxes for but couldn't go to. So what's happening in DPS today is not anything new. It's just come to a heightened level of being overt, and we still somehow don't see the writing on the wall. It's not even on the wall anymore. It's in live and living color. Anyhow, 66, April 7th, hundreds of Northern high school students staged a 4-day walkout after the principal, McCarty, attempts to suppress an editorial written by Charles Coding. And I would love to reach out to Charles Coding. If you're out there, if someone knows him, please put him in touch with me. When I was writing my dissertation, I made it a point to include the Northern walkout in my work. His editorial criticized the deplorable conditions and the quality of education, or lack of quality of education available to African American students at Northern High School and other Detroit public schools. Parents demanded that Carty be removed, and it took a year. It took 2 years, actually, because it wasn't until the spring of 1968 that an African American principal was assigned to Northern High School. And this is interesting because we know by 68, I would guess, and there's probably some documentation that could support this, that there was, and Detroit was becoming even more black. We know That was a year after the rebellion. And it's mythical. Don't believe that the white flight began after 67, because it began well before that. In fact, it began in the 40s. By the time we get to 67, it's heightened. Now I'm going to go back to the prior week. These are some of the things that I had identified to talk about for the past week in African American history in Detroit. On March the 28th in 1864, the 901st Michigan Colored Regiment was organized at Camp Ward in Detroit as the 102nd U.S. Colored Troops Regiment. They leave for the Civil War service on the Union side. And I would hope if they were black folks coming from Michigan, they definitely wouldn't be going to fight for the Confederacy. They battle in a number of major battles in the Deep South, including places like South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. During the following 19 months from 1864 going forward, over 1,400 African American men served in this regiment. During that time period, 10% or 140 of those men, African American men that served in the 102nd U.S. Colored Troops Regiment would die. So 140 died, give or take a few. And there's a plaque. I forgot to put down exactly where the plaque is. I'm not even sure if it's still there, but there's a lot of Detroit historians around that can tell us where that plaque is as well. And many of us saw Glory with Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman. And a lot of us didn't know that Detroit had its own black regiment that went and fought. And I'd like to mention, and I'm going to get the name of this book, but there's a book, if it's not out, coming out by Errol Henderson, Detroit's own Errol Henderson, who's a political scientist at State College, which is in State College, Pennsylvania. And in this book, he talks about the idea that the Civil War was actually a revolution carried out by black people. And I would love to have him come in and talk about that. It's a real interesting concept. On March the 29th, and I hope that there's some people in the audience that remember this, that there's some people around that may be there or that may have some close connection to. Maybe I can get some New African People's Organizations or Republic of New African People on the line in one of the subsequent shows to talk about this. On March the 31st in 1968, a convention of black nationalists met under the sponsorship of the Malcolm X Society and the Groups on Advanced Leadership. 50 delegates signed a powerful Declaration of Independence calling for the establishment of a separate nation. When the last time you heard black folks talk about a separate nation? Which they proposed to include the following 5 states: Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and South Carolina. So the people that came together to formulate what became the Republic of New Africa said, look, give us, let us take, or however we get it, 5 states, we'll separate and create our own country, our own nation. When was the last time somebody, that's on the level of broadness and depthness of what Marcus Garvey was trying to do when he tried to organize African people around the world, worldwide. When during colonialism, when almost every African country was under the colonial rule of some European power, when these collective people who had come together, Germany had broke the rules and had lost control of Togo as a result of these white people who came together to declare the American pie for themselves. Marcus Garvey stood up and said, give those colonies to us, give them to me. Where are the black men that do that kind of stuff? As I was preparing for the show today and thinking about this concept of being water upon, I was also reminded of a song by Leon Thomas. And I urge you, anybody within the realm of my voice, the song is called It's My Life I'm Fighting For. We're fighting for our lives. Even those of us that are not fighting don't realize we're fighting for our lives And the idea of black life has been under attack ever since before. The last part of that is a quote from Bob Marley, ever since before. We were under attack when we had classical civilizations in Egypt, classical East African age, Kemet, Nubia, Kush, Axum, roughly 4000 BCE to 800 AD, continuously under attack by non-Africans. In a more recent time, more modern time, 1500 going forward, African people captured, spread throughout the Western Hemisphere. And I always admit, which I need to do more research on, was the Arab attack on East Africa in between roughly the 6th century, the 7th century, and the 10th century. The enslavement of East Africans and the whole dispensation of East Africans into what's now called the Middle East. Anyhow, going back to the concept of war, 1968, these brothers and sisters came together. Malcolm X Society, Group on Advanced Leadership. We know the Group on Advanced Leadership was Imari Obadeli. I can't remember. It was Milton Henry, Richard Henry brothers. Guy Eady and Imari Obadeli, the Henry brothers. Albert Clay, Jeramogi Abebe Ajamin, and many others. Arthur Smith, a.k.a. Kwame Atta. General Masai Balagoon. A lot of people came together to formulate the early iteration of what became the Republic of New Africa. Black activist Robert F. Williams, living in exile in China at the time, was chosen as the first president of the Provisional Government. And I can't help but remember Marcus Garvey elected, he was designated as the first provisional president of the government of Africa. He envisioned, he had a concept in his mind of building a Pan-African world community. He not only had a concept in his mind, he did the work that was necessary to make that happen. Unfortunately, he was not able to complete the work, but if nothing else, I would never say he was a failure, because along with the institutions that he created, although they were destroyed, one of the greatest things he did was teach black people, African people, to embrace and accept and relish in the fact that we're African people, and to truly know and celebrate our glory as such. Black activist Robert F. Williams, living in exile in China at the time, was chosen as the first president, the provisional president, the first president of the provisional government. Attorney Milton R. Henry, Bobby Imari Obadeli, was named the first vice president, and get this, Betty Shabazz, widow of Malcolm X, was named the second vice president. I'm sure that's a little known fact, that Betty Shabazz was down with the RNA. Come on now. We talking about black people exercising Kujichagulia, exercising their agency, not asking for permission, not saying, let's get it put on a referendum, not saying, oh, please, master, boss man, would you allow us to do that? They said, no, we're doing this, we're asserting it, we're claiming it, and we're going to make it a reality. This gathering was the catalyst for the forming of the Republic of New Africa. 1969, a year later, 2 days before, 300 members of the Republic of New Africa, a black nationalist organization, now this is a year after organization has been created, met at the New Bethel Baptist Church. That's right on Philadelphia and Linwood. At the time, C.L. Franklin, who is Aretha Franklin's father, was the pastor. They met at the New Bethel Baptist Church to celebrate the group's first anniversary. As the meeting began to end, an incident occurred between the RNA, Republic of New African members, and 2 Detroit police officers. Now, one thing I know for sure, I wasn't involved in the mix in '69. I was watching some of this, inspired by what I saw, because by '69, the Panthers are all in the newspaper. You could go downtown, various places in the city, see a brother or sister selling Black Panther Party papers. The image put out to the world of the Black Panthers, what they stood for. The image of Huey P. Newton or Bobby Seale sitting in this wicker chair with a spear and an M16 machine gun, that was very powerful in terms of influencing the imagination of a 10-year-old boy. And I know if I was inspired and influenced, there were a lot of others that were. Some of them I know because they're still doing the work today. I think I kind of drifted off there, but anyhow, going back to March 29th, 1969, 300 members of the Republic of New Africa, a black national organization, met at the New Bethel Baptist Church to celebrate the group's first anniversary. As the meeting begins to end, an incident occurs between the Republic of New African members and 2 Detroit police officers. Now, what I was going to say, I had the opportunity in 1983 or 84 to attend a Black Nation Day event hosted by the RNA at Atlanta Clark University. The brothers in the RNA were very serious. They took security serious. Before the event began, they secured the premises. They secured the building where the event was going to be at. These brothers were so serious, somebody called the police with some kind of complaint, and they tried to come onto the campus into a particular building. The security for the RNA said, sorry, but for you to come on campus, you got to check your guns in. These are the kind of Africans that were around at this time doing this kind of business. It wasn't about they were trying to assault the police or anything, but they felt like this is an event that we're holding under our sovereignty as a black nation, and we are the law here, and for you to do what it is you came to do, you have to respect the fact that we're law. Now, unfortunately, it didn't play out well for the people in the Republic of New Africa, but the point I want to make is that there were African brothers and sisters that were this serious about sovereignty. Sovereignty is a word that doesn't even roll off our lips anymore. We talk about building a black nation, but how serious are we? The incident resulted in 50 police officers attempting to enter the church. The police eventually broke the doors down. They forced their way into the church. Allegedly, a shootout ensues. This is based on the police perspective. Of course, they say they weren't allowed in. Once they forced their way in, they were fired on by the inhabitants of the property. This sounds very reminiscent of another 1969 event that occurred in Chicago. Former chairman of the local Chicago, Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, in his apartment, sleep with his family, close confidants, sleep. And some sellout brother had given the police, in a coordinated effort of law enforcement agencies operating under the auspices of the FBI, a floor plan so they knew exactly where Fred Hampton slept, and had also allegedly given him sedatives so that he wouldn't even be in his right state of mind to respond. They fired over 100 bullets into that apartment. They, like the people in the New Bethel incident said, they fired at us, so we fired back. In the Chicago incident, in Chicago, Illinois, they made the mistake of leaving the crime scene open, and after investigators got through with that, they found out that not one bullet, or if it was one, it was only one bullet, was a shot that fired out of the apartment. But by this time, we had the emergence of law and order presidential candidates and things like this. So the apparatus, to quote my dear sister Angela Davis, she talks about this in 13, the apparatus of the state was used as a weapon against African people. This has historically been the case. Numerous RNA members were arrested and taken into custody. Out of concern for the safety of the detainees, the Honorable Judge George W. Crockett Jr. implements court proceedings right in the police station. And if I'm not mistaken, it was at the 10th precinct. If somebody has more accurate information, please call in and tell us. But he feared for the safety of these brothers who, in their minds, were simply acting within the realm of their rights to assert themselves as, not as sovereign entities. And I'm not talking about sovereignty in the concept that people are talking about today. I'm going to get sovereignty and get my $1 million. No. I'm talking about black men and women that were serious about building a nation for black people. You see, this is a Republic of New Africa. George Crockett, who was a judge within the system, he at least had enough consciousness, wherewithal, and concern for his people to say, look, we're going to hold these court proceedings right here, because if we don't hold the court proceedings right here and these people are fed into this jail system, we don't know how many of them are going to survive. Because if it's perceived that they attack the police, we already know what the police do to people that attack them or strike back at them. And I'm not advocating that you should. Of course, that's another conversation. March 31st, oh, did I do March 31st? I did. I'm on the previous year. I think I read these out of context. 1969, the brothers and sisters gather. No, I got it flipped. 68, they formulate the RNA. They come back a year later to celebrate. What's up, Beck? I see you. Thanks for calling, for tuning in. I hope you're enjoying the show. So the shootout ensues, as I said, and thanks to Judge Crockett, a lot of these brothers were probably saved. Now, these events I talked about in the context of this, what I call acts of war, or the war or attack on black America. And it's not just black America, it's the attack, historical attacks on African people that date back ever since before. And just to give you, just to recap some of these things, from 1500 going forward, we have the enslavement of African people, implementation of the transatlantic slave trade, which in fact becomes the industry, the core industry, to several peripheral industries that fuel the development of several so-called super European powers. UK, which the sun never set on the British Empire. Ain't that a beautiful thing for them? The Netherlands, the United States, the Portuguese, and others. African people in this country are enslaved from 1619 to 1865, physically enslaved. We never even dealt with the mental enslavement or the undoing, as Minister Malik Shabazz said in this segment he did before I came on. The greatest weapon against the people, the greatest weapon is the minds of the people. That's Stephen Biko. Once the enemy has your mind, it's a wrap. And unless we get our minds back, not much is going to change. 1865, emancipation, we're physically free. Of course, the mental slavery has not been undone. Reconstruction, which I talked about previously, is a time period that we're supposed to really do all this great stuff to move in society. We get major pushback, the rise of the Klan, criminalization of blacks. Check out 13th Amendment. Slavery ends, but you can enslave people that have been convicted of a crime. The former enslavers, who academics like to call planters, these were damn vicious enslavers using tyranny. They were using tactics that you couldn't even use under the Geneva Convention to keep black people physically enslaved. When slavery ended, they still need people to work their plantations. So guess what? They came up with sharecropping, convict leasing. You're a black man somewhere you're not supposed to be. You couldn't prove you were supposed to be there. You got a vagrancy charge. Once you wind up in the local jail, the sheriff of the jail could lease you out to somebody that needed workers. So you get the criminalization of black people. And Chauncey McIntyre tells us, unlike Michelle Alexander, the criminalization of black people didn't begin in 1865 with the so-called New Jim Crow. They criminalized us from day one. If you tried to escape from slavery, you had drapetomania, you had an illness. If you were a free black, and there were free blacks during the whole time that our people were enslaved in this country, you were a threat because they perceived you to be working in operation to end slavery, criminalization of black people. I got my notes all out of order, but Reconstruction, you get the emergence of the Ku Klux Klan, who we knew would meet you at nighttime and tell you if you're still here in the morning, we're going to kill you. Jim Crow era, voter suppression and lynching. We have major voter suppression going on now. Check out a video called The Greatest Democracy Money Can Buy. And I do believe I'm out of time. I will try to pick up next week. We thank everybody for watching, to tuning in. This is the Get Up Stand Up Show with Minister Malik Shabazz. This is the Black in the Day segment with Kafense Chike, Baba Kafense Chike. We're on every Monday from 11 p.m. to 12 p.m. And next week I'll continue with, of course, historical events from Ken Coleman's book. But I want to also revisit this war, particularly as it's playing out now, because it's come to a height. We thank R.J. Watkins and Watkins Broadcasting for affording us this opportunity, and Minister Malik Shabazz. We say, get up, stand up, up you mighty race.